Meet Marcus. Hi, baby. He has so much hair. And he's so strong. He picks up his head already. It's so crazy. He's been doing that since he was born. He could like lift his head up off of my chest. He's super strong and he has a ton of hair. Son. Good baby. He's getting hungry. We're gonna probably eat here pretty soon. I've never loved anything more in my life. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my labor and delivery story. If you guys haven't watched my labor and delivery vlog yet, I would go ahead and check that video out either before or after this video so you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. But basically I just wanted to come on here and tell you guys my story and kind of my experience and what happened step by step. So yeah, if you guys want to know, just keep watching this video. So if you guys have been watching my pregnancy updates, you guys know that I got induced, and I wasn't planning on getting induced. It was a very last minute decision that my doctor, my husband, and I made together, and I was very scared of being induced just because of all the bad things that you hear about inductions, but everything ended up going perfectly and I'm so glad that I did it. I have no regrets. I had been dilating, I think around 36 weeks. I was already at, I believe, a 2. I have my notes right here. Oh yes, so at 36 weeks I was 2 centimeters dilated and 70% effaced. So I had already been dilating since 36 weeks, probably even sooner. And at 37 weeks I was about the same. So when I was 39 weeks I was already at 3 centimeters dilated and 80 to 90% effaced. And at that appointment is when me, my doctor, and my husband decided that we were going to go ahead and go with an induction. And we kind of decided that just because my cervix was so favorable, and based on her experience, she thought that I would have a very successful induction. So my appointment was on a Friday and we decided to do the induction on a Sunday. And I had my induction set for 9 a.m. And you guys will see that in my labor and delivery vlog that at 10:27 my doctor broke my water. So before that I had been with a nurse for about an hour and a half, and she like monitored me. She wanted to check my contractions and check my blood pressure. I signed off all the papers that I needed to sign off on, and we kind of talked for a little bit and I got to ask her any questions that I wanted to ask. So I wanted to see if they would break my water and see if my body would get go into labor that way instead of actually using like Pitocin or Cytotec, which are medications that they use to get women to go into labor. And Cytotec is one of the drugs that they use first, and that drug is mainly used on women who haven't dilated at all. So they'll usually use that one first, and then they'll go into Pitocin, which is administered through an IV in your hand or your arm or something like that, and that gets your contractions going as well. But when they break your water, your body has a natural hormone that should start your contractions, and my doctor said that was totally fine. That was what she had initially planned for me, so we were both on the same page. And then my nurse actually asked me if they could put in an IV in my arm just in case I do end up needing the Pitocin or I end up getting the epidural. And I told my nurse that I did not want to get the epidural, and that if it was okay if I opt out from getting the IV because I didn't want to be uncomfortable. They want to put the IV in your arm in case of an emergency, and they need to administer fluids or I don't know, just anything like that. But I just asked her if it was okay with my doctor that I just wait until I absolutely needed it, if I even needed it, to get the IV in, and they were totally fine with it. So I just want you guys to know that you guys have options when you guys go to your hospital. You don't have to do exactly what they want to do. You guys are allowed to ask questions and let them know what you want and what you don't want. And that was something that I learned in the Lamaze classes, and I was so grateful that I took them, like not only to know how to go through labor naturally, but just to know all of your options and to know that you don't have to get the IV if you don't want to. You don't have to be connected to machines all the time if you don't want to. And that's something that I really wanted to do. I didn't want to get the IV, and I didn't want to be sitting in the bed the entire time getting monitored. And that's why I didn't want to get induced, because usually when you do get induced, you get the Pitocin and you have to sit there with the IV in your arm and getting the drugs the entire time, and you have to get your contractions monitored and the baby's heartbeat monitored the entire time. So I didn't want to be stuck in the bed, and I wanted to be able to walk around, get on the ball, get in the bathtub if I wanted to. And thankfully I was able to do that. As soon as I got there, I let them know that I did not want to get the epidural, and they did not offer the epidural to me at all. And I was so grateful that they didn't. I just didn't want to get offered, and I didn't want the option to get the epidural. So yeah, at 10:27 my doctor came in and she broke my water, and basically I think she just took like a little stick and like stuck it up there, and I don't know, like broke my water pretty much, and I just felt like a warm gush of liquid just come down, and it didn't hurt at all. She also checked me, and I was, I think, at 5 centimeters and 90% effaced. I'm not exactly sure, but I let you guys know exactly on my labor and delivery vlog. So again, my cervix was super favorable. Like, I was ready to go. I just needed a tiny little nudge and to get things going, and that's all I needed. Everything went by so fast. I was only in labor for a few hours. I didn't think I was gonna have my baby until that night or the next morning, just because what you hear about inductions, that they take forever, and you stall out a lot of the times. But those circumstances are only for women who go in that haven't dilated at all whatsoever. Their cervix isn't favorable, it hasn't thinned out at all. That wasn't the case for me. I was very much dilated already. I was halfway there already, and my cervix was right there. It just needed a tiny bit more thinning out for it to start the real contractions. So I want to say maybe 30 to 45 minutes later is when the contractions really started to pick up, and I could tell they were different from Braxton Hicks, because Braxton Hicks feel like your stomach tightening, and you could feel like the pressure of their head in your cervix. And this time with the real contractions, it felt similar to that, but adding the back pain. The lower back just kind of tightens up, and like it feels like it's your muscles are tightening up and twisting, and you could still feel your stomach like tightening up as well. They didn't start out very painful, and the first thing that I wanted to do was to get on the bouncing ball, and that really helps with getting the baby into position and opening up your hips. So I did that for a few minutes. I want to say about 30 minutes. I did everything in about 30-minute intervals. So you don't want to be doing the same thing for longer than 30 minutes so that you can keep your contractions going and you can keep progressing. So that's what I did. Every 30 minutes I would change positions or do something different. So the first thing that I did was bounce on the ball, and then I went to walk around the halls. And when I went to go walk around, that's when they started picking up a little bit more. And I could still talk through them, but I would have to stop and kind of bend over, and my husband would rub my back, my lower back a little bit. So I want to say about 2 hours later, my nurse checked me again to see if I had progressed any, and I was still at a 5. So when she checked me, and it had already been 2 hours later, I got really discouraged because I was still at a 5, and I was really hoping that I would at least progress to maybe like a 6 at least. And I kind of got discouraged, and I figured that, you know, I was just gonna be there all day. So after that, I got into the bathtub for a little bit, and that's when the contractions started to pick up a little bit more. After about 30 minutes, I got out of the bathtub and I started bouncing on the ball again. And then after I bounced on the ball, I went to go into the hallway and I started walking around, and I could no longer talk through the contractions, and I would really have to bend over, and my husband would take the tennis ball and rub it into my lower back while I was having the contraction. Once I came back into the room, I got into the bathtub again, and once I was in the bathtub, my contractions were pretty bad. That's when I started going into transition, because they really started to hurt pretty bad at that point, and I had the jets going, and for some reason laying down I was really uncomfortable. So I ended up getting out of the bathtub again like 30 minutes later, and that was really hard. Once you're in transition, when you're trying to move positions, it's very painful. So when I got out of the bathtub, I went into the bouncing ball again, and that's when my contractions got even worse, and they were the most painful. And I honestly was only on the bouncing ball for, I want to say like 30 minutes, if that, because I got on the bouncing ball at 3:10 and I had my son at 3:52. So again, it was a very short period of time. Everything went by super fast. I was in transition for max like an hour, and it honestly wasn't that bad because I had a good break in between each contraction where I was able to catch my breath and kind of focus and get myself ready for the next contraction. You guys see in my vlog that I was bouncing on the ball, and then when I would get the contraction, I would lean over my husband like this, grab onto his either like his pants or his shirt or whatever, kind of stretch out my back, and that really helped me out a ton. Honestly, if it wasn't for my husband and my mom right next to me the entire time, I don't think I would have been able to get through it. But it's possible. You guys can do it. You can get through it. I honestly thought it was going to be way worse than it actually was. I thought I was going to be screaming and dying the entire time. And all I had to do was take deep breaths and control my breathing and just let my body do what it was meant to do. I know at one point when I was bouncing on the ball, I had to stand up and kind of open my legs and kind of squat down a little bit. So at that point, my doctor stopped by to check on me. I think the nurse had already called her to let her know that I was getting pretty close to having the baby. And at this point, like, I didn't know I was ready yet. I thought, you know, I thought I was still gonna have to be there for another few hours, just because when they first checked me, I was still at a 5. So I didn't think I had progressed that much, and I knew that my contractions had picked up, but I just figured that they were going to get worse and that I was still like maybe like at a 7 or 8. So when they got really bad, my nurse actually had me lay back down on the bed and she checked me again, and I thought I would only be like at a 7 or an 8, and when she checked me I was already at a 9. So no, I was at a 9.5. So I was super close. Like, I was right there. I was pretty much ready to go, and I did not want to lay down. Like, it hurt so bad to try and lay still for her to check me. So as soon as she was done checking me, I got up and I started bending over the bed, and my husband would rub my back again while I had the contractions. And I just remember having a contraction where I felt like I needed to push. So I told her, hey, I feel like I need to push, the baby's coming, like, can I push? And she's like, yeah, go ahead, lay down and we'll start pushing. So literally like minutes later, I think it was like 3 or 4 contractions that went by and I had my baby, and each contraction I would have pushed 3 times. So I think I pushed maybe like a total of 12 times, and he came out. At one point my doctors like wanted me to stop pushing because I was tearing, and she didn't want me to tear really bad. I did end up tearing a little bit and I got 2 stitches. That was one of my worst fears, by the way. While I was pushing, I don't even remember feeling the contractions anymore. I just felt like a really strong burning sensation where the baby was coming out, and I don't know if that was me opening up or if the burning was because I was ripping. So I don't know, that was like the worst part, is just the burning feeling. But I just remember like pushing so hard with like everything I had. And one of my other worst fears was actually pooping. And everybody tells you that like they could feel the difference between when you're pushing to poop and when you're pushing to have the baby. And everybody who told me that was somebody who had an epidural. And so I was like, okay, you know, like I'm not gonna poop. Hopefully I don't poop. And no, like when I was pushing, I just pushed as hard as I possibly could, and anything that came out like came out, because like when you're at that point and you're having your baby natural, I just felt like I wanted it to be over with, so I pushed as hard as I possibly could, and I ended up pooping. And I remember that when it happened, like I felt it happen, and I remember saying to my doctor, I'm so sorry, I didn't want to do that. And she was just like, it's fine, you're good, you're using the right muscles, like it's fine, don't worry about it, let's go, let's keep going. And it was fine. I mean, it was kind of embarrassing, but at that point, like, you don't even care. And then I also remember like going down and touching his head, and that was really cool. I could totally feel everything. Like I remember feeling his little like cheeks come out, and then I remember feeling like his whole body like just like sliding out. It was super crazy. Ooh, I get like the adrenaline rush just like thinking about it again. But I have no regrets on how I decided to do things. I know everybody decides what's best for them, and I decided that I didn't want the epidural. A lot of people told me to just go in, get the epidural and get it over with, and if I got the epidural I would be more present and in the moment and enjoy it more. And honestly, that is not true, because in my opinion I couldn't have been more present and in the moment than I was without any medication. Everything went just so perfectly. It was so amazing. I'm so glad that my husband was there and that my mom was there. She really helped me get through each contraction. And I'm so glad that I did get induced, because how everything went by so quickly, I feel like I probably could have had my baby at my house or in the car or something, because I had decided that if I was gonna not get induced, I wanted to labor at home for as long as I possibly could. And I know that I could have gone up to the point to maybe like an hour before I had to start pushing at home, because the contractions weren't that bad until like that last hour. So as soon as I got done pushing my baby out, right away they put my son on my chest, and I got to hold him and just be with him for a little bit. While I was holding him, I delivered the placenta, and that didn't hurt at all. It just felt like a slimy bag sliding out of you pretty much, and that didn't take long at all. As soon as I was done delivering the placenta, my doctor stitched me up, and that was a little bit painful. I didn't have any medication for that either. She just went in and put 2 stitches. I felt like it took forever for her to stitch me up, but I got through that, and then they gave me a shot in my thigh, and that was so that my uterus could start contracting down to normal size. And then they like pushed on my stomach really hard. That did hurt. And then they took my baby to weigh him. He was 7 pounds and 9 ounces, and he was 20.5 inches long. And he was born January 7th, 2018. at 3:52 p.m. So while they were getting him ready to go, they got me up and I had to go to the bathroom and try and pee. And that was the hardest thing I've ever had to do because I don't know, I just couldn't pee. And then once I was peeing, it burnt so bad. They give you like a little squirt bottle that you put warm water into it, and you have to like squirt yourself while you're trying to pee so that it doesn't burn as bad, but it still burns. Like yeah, that part's not fun. And then they took me to my recovery room, and then once we got into my recovery room, we started trying to breastfeed right away. And let me just tell you that I have so much respect for anybody who has breastfed their babies for any amount of time. I think trying to breastfeed has been one of the hardest things I have ever had to do. Breastfeeding for me is so much harder than going through labor. Like mentally, physically, emotionally, breastfeeding has been super hard for me, and something that I'm so glad that I'm able to do now, but it's been like a long journey. My baby is now 3 weeks old, and I'm barely starting to feel like I am breastfeeding successfully and not in so much pain anymore. My baby did not latch on very well in the beginning. I think it took him about 2 weeks to actually start latching on good enough, so that caused me to have a lot of pain. I'm gonna have an entire video dedicated to just breastfeeding, but yeah, breastfeeding at first is super painful. My baby just wasn't getting enough from the very beginning, so I did give him formula, but I gave him formula through a syringe that was connected to a tiny little tube that I would tape onto my breast, and he would latch onto my breast, and the tube would be right there, so he would get formula but be sucking on my breast. So he like got formula right away, and that was something that I really didn't want to do, but I knew he needed that, so that was just something that we had to do. And that was really stressful because I was still trying to learn how to breastfeed, and he was still trying to learn how to latch. And when your baby is crying uncontrollably because they're hungry, and you're over here trying to tape on a syringe and a piece of plastic and then try and get them to latch on and get the formula, and it's just a mess and it's super stressful. The first night was really hard. He stayed in our room the entire time on the first night, and I wish I would have asked for more help that night, but I don't know, I thought I would be able to do it all on my own, and it was just not the case. It was really, really hard. And he would wake up every 2 to 3 hours to nurse, and I didn't really know what I was doing. He didn't know what he was doing, so it was really painful. And I feel like if I would have asked for more help, then I would have had a better experience in the beginning for trying to breastfeed. And not until that morning I asked to speak to a lactation consultant, and she came in and she helped me out. And I feel like no matter how much you know about breastfeeding, like, it's all up to you and the baby on how things are gonna go. It just kind of depends on your certain situation. So right now we are doing formula and breast milk just because I'm still not producing enough milk, but I feel like some breast milk is better than none. So I'm just doing the best that I can right now, and I'm so grateful that I am able to breastfeed him, at least partially. I'm not exclusively breastfeeding, but I feel like that's what has worked for us, and we do what we have to do to survive pretty much. And that's like what you have to do in the first few weeks, is you just kind of go into survival mode and just do what you have to do to get by. And he's been doing really, really great. He was waking up every 2 hours at the beginning, and now it's every 3 to 4 hours, so he sleeps a little bit more. The first week was the hardest for sure. The second week was still pretty hard, but this third week I feel like things are starting to get into a really good rhythm, and I kind of know what I'm doing, and my son is getting really good at latching. Things are definitely going way better. So I think that's it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and give this video a thumbs up. Bye.